It was a hot Tuesday afternoon when everything fell apart. I remember the way the light filtered through the sheer white curtains in the living room, casting long, soft beams across the wooden floor. The house was quiet, as it often was now. My husband, Mark, was working overtime again, or so he claimed. My son, Jacob, had just come home from summer baseball practice. He was 13, right at that awkward edge between boyhood and becoming a young man. Old enough to want independence, but still young enough to need his mom now and then. I had just stepped out of the shower. Wrapped in a towel, hair still damp, I stood in front of the mirror brushing out the tangles and thinking about everything and nothing at once. It had been a stressful week, a stressful month. If I was honest, it had been a stressful year. "Mom!" Jacob called from downstairs. His voice familiar and comforting in a house that lately felt too big, too empty. "Up here, sweetheart." I called back, not thinking much of it. I assumed he'd head to the kitchen first, like always, grab a Gatorade, maybe some leftover pizza, and vanish into his room with his headphones. But instead I heard footsteps heading up the stairs. And then, before I could even react, the door burst open. There was a split second of stillness. My towel slipped. His eyes widened in shock, and my heart jumped into my throat. "Jacob!" I gasped, scrambling to hold the towel back around me. He looked horrified. I'm sorry, I didn't know." He turned red, spun around, and ran back down the hallway, the door slamming shut behind him. I stood frozen for a moment, clutching the towel against me, feeling my heart race, my skin burning from more than just embarrassment. I had expected to feel flustered, maybe laugh about it later. But what I felt wasn't just embarrassment. It was dread. 'Cause I had a secret. Big one. And that moment wasn't just about a towel slipping. It was about the weight of all the little lies piling up, and the one terrible truth I had been trying to bury for months. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still wrapped in the towel, my hands trembling. Jacob didn't just see something innocent. He saw me vulnerable, and I feared he might start to piece things together. Because if he had been paying attention over the past few weeks, if he had heard things or seen someone leave the house at the wrong time, he might already suspect something wasn't right. And he would be right. It had started innocently enough. Or at least I told myself that at first. Mark and I had been drifting apart for a long time. At first I blamed the stress of work, the stress of parenting, the growing silences between us. But over time I stopped waiting for things to get better. I stopped hoping he'd come home early. I stopped dressing up for him, cooking special meals, trying to initiate conversations that never went anywhere. And then came Evan. Evan was a friend of Mark's. Or at least he used to be. He came by a lot at first to help with some home repairs. Stuff Mark kept saying he'd get around to but never did. Evan was kind, funny, and unlike Mark, he actually listened. He noticed the little things. When I cut my hair, he said it looked beautiful. When I made lemonade from scratch, he asked for seconds. When I talked about how lonely I felt, he didn't change the subject. One afternoon, after he had fixed the leaky kitchen faucet, I offered him iced tea. We sat on the porch, watching the trees sway in the summer breeze, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. That feeling became a craving. It wasn't long before our conversations became something else. Then the touches started. Innocent at first. Hand brushing mine. A hug that lingered too long. More. I told myself it wasn't an affair. Not yet. That as long as it was just emotional, it was different. But it wasn't different. By the time I realized how far it had gone, it was too late. Jacob never said anything after that day. He barely looked at me that evening at dinner. He sat in his chair, poking at his pasta, eyes glued to his phone. I tried to make small talk, asked about baseball practice, but his answers were short and forced. I thought maybe it was just teenage awkwardness. Maybe the towel thing had just really embarrassed him. But a few nights later, I heard him talking to someone on the phone in his room. "I don't know, man. I think something's going on with my mom. She's acting weird. There was a guy here last week when my dad was working, and I think he stayed a long time." I froze in the hallway. He knew. Or at least he was starting to suspect. My throat tightened. I felt like a criminal caught red-handed. Except it wasn't just me I was hurting, it was my son. My boy. The person I swore to protect and raise with honesty and strength. And yet there I was, lying to him every day with a smile. The guilt consumed me. I started avoiding Evan. I told him we had to stop. That I had crossed a line I could never uncross, and the damage I'd done might already be irreparable. He didn't fight me. He understood. But the damage had already been done. Jacob withdrew more. He was quiet, distant. He didn't hug me anymore. He barely said goodnight. And Mark? Well, Mark didn't notice any of it. Or if he did, he didn't care. He was still working late, sleeping in the guest room because he claimed he snored too loudly. We had become strangers in the same house. The silence grew louder every day. Then one night I walked past Jacob's room and found the door cracked open. He was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, holding a photo of all three of us, taken at the beach 3 summers ago. He was crying but trying not to make a sound. I knocked gently and stepped in. "Jacob," I whispered, kneeling beside him. "Talk to me." He wiped his face fast. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing," I said. "I know I've made mistakes. And I'm sorry. More than you know." He looked at me, then really looked at me. "Are you gonna leave, Dad?" I felt like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. "I don't know," I said, honest for the first time in a long time. "But I promise you this, whatever happens between me and your dad, it will never change how much I love you. You're the most important person in my life." His voice cracked. "Then why did you lie?" I couldn't answer right away. I wanted to say I didn't mean to, that it just happened. But none of that would undo the pain I caused. "I was lonely," I finally said. "And I was wrong. I should have dealt with things differently. But I want to make it right." He looked down. "I just want my family back." We started going to therapy, both as a family and individually. It was hard, painful, messy. Mark was angry when he found out, of course. Furious. He packed a bag. Stayed at his brother's for a week. But then he came back. Not because he forgave me, but because Jacob asked him to. "We can't fix this unless we try," Jacob told him. Hearing my son say that broke something in me. He shouldn't have had to be the one trying to hold us together. We were the parents. We were supposed to protect him. But maybe that's the thing about mistakes. They teach you how fragile everything is. How easy it is to take love for granted. And how much work it takes to rebuild trust once it's been broken. It's been a year now. Things aren't perfect. But they're better. We eat dinner together more often. Talk. We listen. Jacob laughs again. Mark and we're trying.